Zimbabwe is a sovereign state.
Yes.
You understand? And we move on the basis that gives us the best results of our resources. Whether it is relation with the West or the East, what is primarily important is what we ourselves as Zimbabweans are satisfied with. We don't need to please the West or please the East.
Well, people had their land seized in Zimbabwe who were born in Zimbabwe, and they were targeted on the basis of their race, and I wonder if you think that's good or bad.
No. Land did not belong to a race. It belonged to Zimbabweans. Right. So when the colonialists took land from us, time came when we asserted ourselves, take back our land. And those who wanted to have land at the same basis as the African people of Zimbabwe remained. But those who felt they were superior left.
A single sentence can shake a room, and this one shook the world. On a global stage where African leaders are often expected to choose sides, one president refused the script. No smiling, no pleasing, just truth. What you are about to hear is not politics as usual. It is Africa speaking to itself and to the world. From land to sovereignty to young people, these leaders said what many whisper, but few dare to say out loud. Watch closely because this moment explains the future. Before we begin, please subscribe to Africa Unchained and turn on the notification bell because you don't want to miss what is coming next.
And first to you, President Mnangagwa, again, thanks. In as clear terms as you can, I wonder if you would contrast your experience with China versus the Western powers. Do you think that Zimbabwe and other African countries, to be totally blunt, get a better deal from Chinese investment than they have with Western powers over the past 150 years?
Well, my view is that initially, as we became independent, we had most of our development thrust was from the West. But as we evolved, we have also benefited from investment and cooperation from countries like China.
But the basic structure seems the same. Foreign powers extract mineral wealth from various African countries, but do you think that the arrangement that Zimbabwe and other countries currently have with China is better or worse for Zimbabwe than it was under, say, the Brits?
I think the premises upon which you construct your question, I don't think is perfect.
Not surprised.
Yes, Zimbabwe is a sovereign state.
Yes.
You understand? And we move on the basis that gives us the best results of our resources. Whether it is relation with the West or the East, what is primarily important is what we ourselves as Zimbabweans are satisfied with. We don't need to please the West or please the East. We please ourselves.
Good. That seems like a good model for every sovereign country. President Bio, thank you for this. Do you think that there is a substantial difference? I'm just trying to understand from a Western perspective how the East does business in Africa versus how the West does, and it may be too sensitive a topic really even to talk about out loud, but to the extent you have a view you can share, would you?
I'm sure relations cannot be measured country by country.
Yes.
Relations depend on the historical background of countries between one country and another.
Yes.
That's the basis on which relations grow and are nurtured. For us in Zimbabwe, yes, we are a former British colony, but we are very happy with the relations that have not developed with, say, countries like China and so on.
Yes.
Despite being a former British colony.
I think this maybe one of these topics is too difficult to talk about in public, so let me just ask you, President Bio, about one of the strengths of your country and the continent, which is its birth rate, which so far surpasses that of any other region in the world, and that seems like a strength. How has your country, Sierra Leone, but also many other countries in Africa, been able to maintain a birth rate at replacement when Europe, the US, Canada, lots of other parts of the world have not been able to?
Thank you very much. I think we are hard workers, and we work both in the day and at night. And
that is such great advice.
It is essential to have young people and to keep the birth rate at the right level so that there is sustainability in development. What we do today, or as leaders, we provide the enabling environment, provide them with the tools, the young people, to navigate the world, which is extremely tough, complicated, and evolving and changing all the time. So it is our responsibility to bear that in mind. We have to plan ahead, be ahead of the curve, to be able to replace accordingly so that we don't have a gap in our development process. So we have been busy producing as much as we can, a lot of good people, and we are investing in their education so that they are fit for purpose for a world that is becoming digital and, of course, going extremely to the edge of technological advancement.
If I could just ask you a quick follow-up to you, Mr. President. Do you keep track precisely of how many of your young, educated citizens leave and how many stay? Are you thinking hard about how to retain the smartest, most energetic people?
Definitely. In fact, what my administration did was to make sure that we provide basic primary and secondary education free of charge to the citizens. Every child born in Sierra Leone can go to school and finish high school without paying a penny. We don't just provide tuition, we also make sure that we provide other essentials to make it possible so that nobody has excuse not to go to school, because in the 21st century, without education, definitely you can't make it. And we do not just want to make it at the personal level, family level. We want to grow as a nation. We want to be useful citizens of West Africa, the community that I chair today. But we also want to be useful citizens, global useful citizens that can contribute to the world. So we are taking stock of that, and we are educating them, equipping them. In fact, I call education as an equipment, a navigational equipment in a world that is becoming very, very complicated and complex.
Thank you. President Boko, as you look at young people in Botswana who are educated and energetic, what's your pitch to them? What's your argument to them to stay in Botswana, not go to South Africa, Europe, the United States?
Young people are generally innovative. They are entrepreneurial. They now have become digital natives, and that presents immense opportunities to them. These opportunities mean they can pretty much operate wherever they are, and they must, as a matter of course, remain within Botswana so that they can then spread their reach and influence to every part from Botswana. And so the opportunities that there are in Botswana, the training, the education, the acquisition of skills, the support, the environment that nurtures them and feeds and fuels their verve and vitality is what Botswana offers and what will power Africa. Africa generally is a very young continent with a median age of 19.3. Botswana's median age is 25. And so with such a population, Africa is poised to rule the world.
So, what are your plans for the world once you rule it?
To make it fairer, to make it more equitable, to ensure that intellectual property is internalized in every part of the African continent, that innovation serves humanity, not just a predatory elite, and that everybody can partake equitably and benefit from the fruits of the economy and the vast opportunities that are available in the world.
Well, I look forward to being treated fairly under your rule. Thank you. President Mnangagwa, I wonder what lessons you've been in the government of Zimbabwe for decades in various roles, including through a very turbulent period where your predecessor famously kicked out the whites and then the economy tanked and now it's rising again. I wonder if you would summarize the lessons that your country has learned from that experience.
I'm not so sure what you have in mind. But let me say, our economy has faced challenges. I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
Zimbabwe has been under sanctions for decades as a result of us claiming our land from the British and making ourselves independent. We seized the land and gave it to our people. So sanctions were imposed on us. But in spite of all that constraint we have developed, and we are happy that we have developed on our own, and we feel very independent.
Well, some of the land was seized from people who were born there. So I wonder if there's a lesson about targeting people on the basis of their skin color. Do you think?
Can I hear you?
Well, people had their land seized in Zimbabwe who were born in Zimbabwe, and they were targeted on the basis of their race, and I wonder if you think that's good or bad.
No. Land did not belong to a race. It belonged to Zimbabweans. Right. So when the colonialists took land from us, time came when we asserted ourselves, take back our land. And those who wanted to have land at the same basis as the African people of Zimbabwe remained. But those who felt they were superior left.
Okay. Mr. Bio, it does seem like, Mr. President, that the model of government around the world seems to be changing, and people seem to have lost confidence in democracy, at least in the West. People aren't quite as keen to promote democracy. Do you notice this? Do you think democracy is in retreat around the world?
I think the world is in transition.
Yes.
And normally that comes along with instability. I normally refer to it as we are in a state of flux.
Yes.
We have been told to go democratic, and those who are leading the way or who have been teaching us to be democratic are no longer committed to that method of governance. So we are left to choose, but I still believe that democracy is the best method of governance, choosing who leads, especially liberal democracy with all the freedoms that go with it, so that human rights and the and other liberties are observed and maintained. We remain committed to democracy, irrespective of the fact that there are now reversers, even in Africa, around the world. In fact, these days, when you listen to world news and other things, you hardly hear about democracy. You're very right. But we are committed to it because it is the best form until we can provide an alternative that can really sit well with us in society. We remain committed to democracy.
China is a relatively new entrant, really,
yes,
into the historical space and climb. China only lifted itself out of abject poverty over the last 40 years. We've been free from colonialism now in Botswana for almost 60 years. We have had an affinity with the West because of the relationship, the special relationship that we've had with them. And China has only come in, and we relate with China on terms that we define ourselves. We look at what it is that China offers, what it is that we need, and we sit and we get as good a deal as we are able to negotiate in a situation where all the parties come to the table and present their offerings. So I think the relations are shaped largely by what the interests of these African countries, ourselves included, are.
Interesting. President Mnangagwa, what did you think of what happened in Venezuela last month?
Venezuela is very far away from Zimbabwe.
Yes, it is. yes, sir. But I wonder, I still wonder as a head of state, a longtime head of state, what you thought of that. I mean, you must pay attention to what happens to other heads of state.
Yeah, but I don't know what we really read in Zimbabwe actually happens in Venezuela, but from what we read, we are interested to know why it is happening.
President B, what did you think?
I was stunned, and I'm still stunned. It was so surreal that I still have to understand whether the world order, the rules-based society, is still existing. And if not, what becomes of the world? That's why I earlier described the state as we are in a state of flux, because everything that we have understood as the basis for international order is fragmenting or being destroyed right in our face.
I'm sorry, it felt like an unfair question, but that's exactly more to the point what I'm asking is this a sign of a changing order? And I will end with you, President Boko. What was your response to it?
Well, I think we are seeing a world where rules seem to matter very little, and they matter only depending on who is benefiting from them and who is wielding the stick at any given point in time. We know that public international law respects territorial integrity, it respects the sovereignty of nations. And it also requires that the people of every nation state must exercise their self-determination. They must determine what happens within their borders. And to have external powers intrude and remove any head of state, regardless of what the circumstances are, I think it's something that is utterly shocking, and it is an affront to a rule-based international order. I think it must be described in starkly those terms and nothing pretentious.
Gentlemen, thank you for doing this and for your patience with my questions, and I really appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What you just watched was more than answers to questions. It was Africa thinking out loud. No filters, no fear, no permission asked. From Zimbabwe to Botswana to Sierra Leone, these leaders reminded the world of something simple but powerful. Africa is not owned. Africa is not confused, and Africa is not waiting to be rescued. For too long, Africans have been told to choose West or East, aid or sanctions, silence or survival. But what you heard today is a different path, a path of self-respect, a path of clear eyes and strong backs, a path where Africa decides what works for Africa, using its land, its people, its ideas, and its future. This conversation matters because the world is changing fast. Resources are being hunted, narratives are being written, and ideas are being made. If Africans do not understand this moment, others will explain them for us and never in our favor. That is why Africa Unchained exists, to tell Africa's story with honesty, courage, and clarity. If this video made you think, feel, or see things differently, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you never miss important updates from across the continent. Stay informed, stay grounded, stay unchained.